Good morning to you in Wilmington, North Carolina. That's where I am. I am Mark Sudduth, and it is Friday, the 10th day now of March 2023. And you know, if I'm in here on a Friday early in the morning like it is here now, early for me anyway, in the off season, that something big must be happening. Well, you know what? The weather doesn't have an off season, and we've been talking more and more over the last several years about other big ticket weather events outside of hurricanes. That might be my specialty. But I'm telling you, we've got some big stuff to talk about here. This West Coast storm, very heavy rainfall, actually a high risk of rainfall and flooding and related issues out in California. The possibility of a bona fide significant nor'easter for New England and vicinity next week. We'll talk about that. And of course, Freddy, Cyclone Freddy, and it's on me, kind of ignored it up to now, and it's high time I take a look at that. So we're going to take a look at Freddy because it has been setting records and it's still hanging around. And in fact, that's what we will start with here as we get rolling. All right, thanks for joining in. Let's see what we've got going on out there. First of all, this is a nice dashboard, Tropical Cyclone real-time dashboard, and lots of good tools here. We use this a lot during hurricane season. Here is Freddy, a tropical cyclone or just a cyclone. It's all the same thing except it's in the southern hemisphere. And so it spins clockwise. It's over here in the Mozambique Channel. Now, Freddy has been around for a long, long time. It tracked across the Indian Ocean. I'm going to back out here and go to this map. It tracked all the way across the Indian Ocean over here, made landfall in Madagascar, then went across the Mozambique Channel, made landfall briefly in Mozambique, came back out. It's been milling around out here. And this has taken over a month. And it has accumulated more than 80 cyclone points, if you want to call it that, the ACE points that we call it, right? The accumulated cyclone energy, it has 80. So think of a basketball player in a game scoring 80 points. Yes, that's happened from time to time. I can't think of whom off the top of my head, but it doesn't matter. This is big, just like if, let's just say in today's college games that are going on, we're getting ready to hit the NCAA tournament. We have regional tournaments going on, different conference tournaments. And let's say some single player was able to score 80 points in a game in Division I, all right? That would be big news. It would be on ESPN Sports Center and all kinds of stuff, right? Same thing here with Freddy. Freddy is your high scoring, and it's the second on the list. Ioki, a hurricane back in 2006, is the single longest lived ACE producer on record at about 85 points. Accumulated cyclone energy, that's the wind energy output from tropical cyclones. Freddy here, pretty close to the record there, and it's going to last longer. Freddy's not done. Let's take a look at a couple things here. Here's a tweet from the University of Wisconsin, their Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Studies. Freddy's slowing down to a crawl. That's not good because it's going to bring a lot of rainfall to eastern Mozambique there. Wind shear is forecast to relax, and you can see it's already starting to look better organized, more outflow, more banding again. And this thing is going to be around even longer. This is the GFS. When have I ever showed you the GFS for this part of southeastern Africa? This is amazing. There's Freddy right there in the 850 millibar portion of the atmosphere, or about 5,000 feet up. We use this a lot when we look at hurricanes in the Atlantic, and so it's very useful even for southern hemisphere cyclones. So let's move this out in time and watch what happens with Freddy. It just barely makes landfall, and then, as if to defy everything that we thought we knew about how these systems work and how the steering is and so forth, it kind of sits around and then might try to come back out yet again. And look at the timestamp there. That's 132 hours into the future. It's still there, approaching March 15th, dancing around again. Unbelievable. It could absolutely break and shatter the longevity record and the ACE record for a single storm. Really amazing. Now, unfortunately, it's going to bring a lot of heavy rainfall to an area that can ill afford it right now. So flooding is going to be a big concern. I don't want to say a humanitarian crisis because I don't know that, but certainly not good news for the people in that area. And this is a week out. We'll stop there, just like we do with Atlantic activity. No reason to go beyond a week's time, but it looks like it could come back out into the Mozambique Channel. Water temperatures are warm out there, and that could be a real big problem going forward. All right, so there's Freddy. We're not going to ignore it either after this. I'll talk about it maybe even throughout the weekend, just updates on Freddy, because this is a big, big story. The other big story, looking over at our friends at Fox Weather, all kinds of stuff going on. Let's look at these 4 panels. They make it real easy for me here. In the northern tier states, all kinds of blizzard warnings, winter storm warning, winter weather advisory. Yes, winter is still hanging on. You know what? After February and how warm it was, I'm sure a lot of people were mocking the groundhog, Puxatawny Phil. And look, I realize it's just all fun and whatnot, and they made a nice movie about it with Bill Murray. But all kidding aside, the sort of warm February, record-setting February that we had, and everybody was like, hey, that groundhog needs to just be fired. Well, now March, the groundhog is like, dude, I'm back. I was right. You got to believe in me, because look at this. We're getting winter where we were having spring in February. It's just all mixed up. It's crazy. So let's move on to the next panel. This is out west, and this is very, very serious. We're talking areas that have been hit by extremely heavy snowfall, rainfall as well, over and over and over again. And I've been saying it often that we needed it, but this is really starting to get to be too much now. There have been deaths, unfortunately. We've heard about that in the San Bernardino Mountains from too much snow stranding people, at least a dozen deaths there. Now we've got these reds showing up, and when we look at weather and a lot of different things in our lives, red usually means something that we need to pay attention to. And in this case, that is definitely the situation, because we're talking about extreme risks here associated with flooding in California. And then moving along, yes, the threat of severe weather for parts of the deep south, that very warm Gulf of Mexico I've been talking about, that'll come into play with this. At least it's not, looking at the very likely to extreme. We're down in the low part here. But nevertheless, some severe weather threat for parts of the deep south. And then, as we head towards next week, the possibility of a nor'easter. And, you might be thinking right off the top of your head, how much snow am I going to get? Well, snow, it's kind of like when we look at hurricanes. How windy is it going to be? What's the wind speed? Remember, there are more impacts from hurricanes and nor'easters than just the big headline makers. Hurricanes, it's usually wind. What's the wind? What's the wind? Or the category. That's more, I think, what people think of. And then with nor'easters, we automatically think how much snow, when you need to be thinking overall impacts, because this is potentially going to be a big coastal event, as well as a heavy, wet snow producer. And no, we don't really know where all of these are going to set up, these different impacts, just yet. But for parts of the mid-Atlantic, and especially New England, eastern Massachusetts in particular, maybe even farther up the coast into Maine, the Gulf of Maine, this could be a pretty big wind generator and a long-duration event with counterclockwise flow, onshore flow, piling up the Atlantic there into Cape Cod Bay and vicinity. I've been up there several times since about 2014. As I said earlier, been expanding outside of just hurricanes, so I'm starting to get to know that region better. And I'm telling you, we have to pay attention to this, because there's the potential for what we call a pretty high ceiling of impacts as this system starts to take shape late into the weekend and into early next week. All right, looking at the National Weather Service watch and warnings map, this tells the tale really nicely here. Very cold, wintry weather in the northern tier states, and that includes parts of the eastern U.S. as well, Michigan all the way over to parts of even western Massachusetts and offshore here. I believe that is our storm warning in the offshore waters. That's really going to get cranked up. That's related to a system out there now. We're going to have to really watch this area closely when we get into next week, and I'll be doing a discussion more than likely tomorrow on all of this as well, so stay tuned for that. Then, of course, out west, all these greens, the pinks in between, we're talking flood, and then the snow, winter storm warnings. Wow, just a big impact event. And we don't want to leave it out. I talked about this on my Monday update. Now we got some weather in Hawaii, and just a little bit there. I think that's freezing spray or something like that. Heavy freezing spray warning for coastal Alaska. But yes, Hawaii, we'll click on it and show you what that's all about. Whoops, it's a text product. Didn't mean to do that. Hawaii's got some high surf warnings going on. just inclement weather on the south side of this big old storm system that I can show you here in just a moment on the satellite animation. First, though, this is very, very important. You know, in severe weather, which, by the way, for the month of March, severe weather is going to be limited because there's just too much cold air down in the lower 48. And the air mass is generally uniform in terms of it's generally cold or colder than normal pretty much everywhere. So there's no big battle zones going on. A few once in a while, but nothing big like we saw in January and February where we had significant tornado outbreaks in Oklahoma. It's just been a weird year so far. But out west here, we have these pinks. That is a high risk, right there, I'm going to point it out to you, of flooding, rapidly evolving flooding, a high risk. If there was a high risk of severe weather in the Great Plains, it would be a big headline. Thousands of chasers would be headed out there. It's a very big deal. We need to think of high risk, and even moderate too, of flooding as the same that we look at severe weather. Now look, I know thousands of chasers aren't going to go out to California, and it doesn't get the attention that it should, but it should, because this is a big deal here. Very, very excessive rainfall amounts. And we're only talking a few inches overall, but it's the areas that it's impacting on snowpack, the fact that it's already wet, 3 to 5, maybe 7 to 8 inches, in some areas even 10 inches, doesn't sound like a whole lot compared to 30 or 40 inches that we get from tropical systems, but we do get flash flooding on some of these rivers down there, and I can show you that real quick on radar scope. Let's drop me out just for a second. Thank you very much. Here's our radar scope. This is the rain moving into California. We have Monterey Bay right down here. I was out there myself back in January. And let's click on this right here. I bet I know what this is. This is in Santa Cruz County, I do believe. Flash flood warning, and I bet you it's the San Lorenzo. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Automatic rain gauges, heavy rain falling along the San Lorenzo River near big trees. That's exactly where I had a camera. I saw the water come up. We all did that were watching. It was on Fox Weather. It filled up this park at big trees, several feet of water. That flows down towards Santa Cruz. I know the highway down there now. I've got a good friend out there, a friend of our project. Ryan Null lives up there in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Now, luckily, some of the rain, the heaviest stuff, has moved on. But, boy, look at these storm cells in here. Some of these being picked up on radar scopes, algorithms. Very heavy rainfall. In the mountains, it's snowfall, and that's really compounding quite a problem here for these folks that are kind of weary of it now. I mean, you need the rain, you want to fill those reservoirs, but gosh, enough's enough. I got bad news for you. Unfortunately, too much of a good thing. There's a lot more coming even after this. Now, this is what it looks like on satellite animation. Actually, I thought I made that as there it is, a standalone GIF animation. Again, let's drop me out, and we'll take a look at what's happening here. There's that atmospheric river coming in. Strong low pressure, cold air in the upper atmosphere. Lots of deep moisture coming in from the subtropics, even as far away as Hawaii. Now, I don't have Hawaii on this particular satellite vantage point, but that giant storm system in the atmosphere impacting even all the way down to Hawaii, streaming that moisture into the west. In the long run, it's disruptive now, but in the long run, this will be a good thing. And the more snow, especially, that we can start depositing into, got a scam call coming in trying to interrupt me, and it did, but we'll just make it go away. The more we can get into the Rockies, the more that will help the Four Corners region down towards the Colorado River Basin and elsewhere. The snowpack in, boy, everybody's looking for me this morning. The snowpack in the Sierra and in the Great Basin does not benefit the Colorado River Basin. It's a whole different story. But in the long run, my point is, this will be good. It's a little bit of pain to go through now. And yes, there has been loss of life due to the heavy snow and other events going on. I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, this will be a good, positive thing in the long run. The next year, maybe 2 years, this could really help with that drought situation out west. All right? Trying to put a little bit of a positive note to this. Then we've got this storm system here coming across the east. It'll try to generate a little bit of a wannabe nor'easter, but it's going to be too far out into the ocean and scoot on away. kind of suppressed to the south and out it goes. But coming up, that will change, and I'll show you that here as we look at the GFS. This is from the 6Z run, so it's overnight 6Z run. So it initialized around 1 in the morning. There's our 992 millibar low, the heavy precip around that out west. There's our one storm system coming in here from Ohio and points east from there. Put this into motion, show you what happens. The first system in the east scoots off the coast and kind of out it goes, winds up a little bit, but it's too far offshore. Then another piece of energy starts to slide across right here, and that's going to make its way offshore of the mid-Atlantic states. Actually, North Carolina, they're my neck of the woods. Yeah, we're southeast, almost to mid-Atlantic. And that starts to really ramp up and make its way up into New England. The GFS kind of spreading the energy out, not focusing it. The Euro, I'll show you in a moment, more focused. And this is early next week. This is valid Tuesday. But look what's happening also on Tuesday. Another one of these atmospheric river events, more energy coming into the west as our storm system lingers here over New England. There's more moisture, unbelievable rain amounts again, coastal California. So, hey Ryan, get ready, buddy, in the Santa Cruz Mountains area. You know the drill all too well. More is coming, more heavy mountain snow. And we're really going to start to have bigger and bigger problems with this, I think, because it's just compounding. This could start to become a major emergency and disaster for parts of California. Like it's getting to that point where it's going to tip the scales to possibly a big disaster out there on a pretty wide scale. So we need to start kind of thinking about that going forward and do what we can to prepare and be ready. FEMA, California government, you name it, the people that live there. I think it's just, more of these are coming. We got problems here, right? This is not even 5 days out. That nor'easter lingers off of New England up here. You see that over there. And then just some kind of disturbance down here, non-tropical, over the very warm Gulf waters could bring some rain and squally conditions possibly to Florida. This is at the 5-day plus time frame, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens from there. Again, I'll revisit this more tomorrow. I'll definitely do an update tomorrow afternoon. Now, this is the Euro, the ECMWF, from 0Z, so it's about 6 hours earlier. This is from last night. The GFS was from this morning. And the Euro doesn't, unfortunately, show us on this particular product from Tropical Tidbits the frozen precip, but you get an idea of the storms and how they march across the country. And again, here's our initial conditions with our storm out west. There's the one here in the east. Watch how everything progresses. And there's the nor'easter, the wannabe. It tries and it goes out. But then look at this next one here. Early next week, the Euro really cranks that up, focuses the energy there. Look at all those isobars in here. Lines of equal pressure. That's a lot of wind. That's that northeast to east wind coming in to New England. And boy, that could really pile up the ocean there. And it's going to be a matter, after that's all set up, how much cold air will there be? What's the atmospheric profile like? I know people are going to want to know about snow, but look, you need to be thinking about as well coastal impacts, possible power outages from some of the wind, and this is going to be a long duration event, not just in and out. So this could be a big problem as well. And then the Euro, of course, hate to draw your attention to it, but I got to. Look at that. Another big system coming in, just like the GFS shows, one after the other for our friends in California and vicinity. Just an active pattern, very, very concerning. When we were hoping for moisture, this is just, like I said, too much of a good thing. All right, so I'll be on top of it. I'll do an update tomorrow, and then more than likely Sunday afternoon, after my son's soccer game, I got to watch my boy play. He's goalkeeper, by the way. Myself and another colleague of mine, Marcel, who lives up here in North Carolina now near Raleigh, we're going to head up, it looks like, I'm pretty sure, the New England area and do what we do. Cover one of these big coastal storms. It's been more than a year. We covered one last in 2021 up that way. Nothing last year. It was kind of a drought of big nor'easters. But this one looks like it could be an attention getter, and I definitely will be watching that and probably have a field mission up there. So we'll be on YouTube, our patrons on Patreon, everybody tune in. Kind of a warm-up as to what's coming. Hurricane season just a couple of months down the road after that, 60 to 90 days out. We're going to start to be watching for tropical whatever, right? Especially with that warm Gulf of Mexico, you never know. Point is, we're getting close to hurricane season. This is kind of like our spring training, so it'll be time to get to work. Winter is not done, and we'll see what happens with that potential nor'easter. And of course, we'll pay attention to California, the West as a whole, and Cyclone Freddy down here. We're not going to ignore Freddy any longer. That's all on me. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just like, well, it's out there, Indian Ocean, whatever, but it matters, so I'm glad I spoke about it today. All right, you guys have a great rest of your Friday. As always, thanks for tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow afternoon.